Hello.
Hello, this is Katrina with the Southeast Asia Resource Action Center. We're just going to give folks a few more minutes to dial on, but thank you for joining us today. Hi, everyone. This is Katrina with the Southeast Asia Resource Action Center. Thank you for joining us today. We're just going to give folks maybe another minute or two to dial in. Thank you for your patience. Hi, everyone. This is Katrina again with SEARAC. Just to remind folks, if you're planning to participate in the Q&A discussion later on, we need to be logged into the webinar to get access to an audio pin, which will allow you to speak. So just a reminder for that. So thank you for joining us today. I think we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Katrina Dizon Mariategue, and I am the Immigration Policy Manager with the Southeast Asia Resource Action Center. And I'm really excited to be moderating today with support from Suvan Lee, our Policy Associate, who will be offering technical assistance for today's call. We will also be joined by Vichet Chun, who will be sharing some important updates on local organizing that's happening in his community in Minnesota. So on behalf of SEARAC, we thank you all today for joining today's call to discuss some important updates around the issue of immigration and deportation. So as many of you are aware, Donald Trump was inaugurated as the 45th President of the United States last Friday. This shift in our country's leadership, however, has been far from business as usual, as he's campaigned on a platform rooted in racist, anti-immigrant, and anti-refugee ideologies. SEARAC is hosting a series of community calls to provide resources to local leaders and organizations who will be at the forefront in fighting back against Trump's racist agenda. On today's call, we will be sharing immigration policy updates, an analysis of the national political landscape, and resources for mobilization. We will also be sharing a little about SEARAC's strategy around advocacy on immigration and deportation. So to kick things off, we thought it would be important to have a brief discussion on what would be at stake for Southeast Asian Americans. Donald Trump's promises to expand the detention and deportation of criminal aliens threatens the safety of many Southeast Asians who are vulnerable to the prison to deportation pipeline. His administration could potentially do a number of things to make mass incarceration and deportation a reality. First, repealing executive actions put in place by President Obama, such as the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program and the Priority Enforcement Memo, could make a wide range of people vulnerable to deportation, including undocumented immigrants, legal permanent residents with criminal convictions, and recent asylum seekers. Second, Trump has stated the need to punish countries who refuse to accept deportees. This could potentially mean stricter sanctions to pressure countries like Laos and Vietnam to start accepting former refugees with deportation orders. This also puts the Cambodian agreement at risk of being more expansive with deportations. Lastly, Trump advisors and allies have spoken about the need to expand the definition of criminality to include individuals accused of crimes who have not necessarily been charged. This blatant attack on due process rights is problematic for Southeast Asian Americans who live in communities plagued by high poverty and crime and lack the support to adequately maneuver the criminal justice system. Donald Trump has also been very upfront about his intent to re-examine our refugee resettlement system under the false guise of national security. There are a number of things this administration could do to threaten America's legacy as a humanitarian leader. In fact, we just heard word this morning that by a number of our partners that President Trump will likely be signing an executive order in the next 48 hours that will focus on temporarily halting Syrian refugee resettlement. This executive order will also have language around cutting refugee resettlement numbers by more than 50%, and there's a possibility of a ban on Muslim refugees from coming into the United States. As we get more information, we will be sure to share the appropriate plans of action with the community. So please do stay tuned for additional updates, and we'll make sure to let folks know as we get that information. So for some congressional policy updates, there have been a number of bills already introduced by the 115th Congress to reflect the political reality inspired by President Trump's anti-immigrant and anti-refugee agenda. Some of the bad bills expected down the pipeline cover issues ranging from the construction of a border wall to attacks on refugee admission in sanctuary cities, as well as the expansion of deportation enforcement. Some of the good bills that advocates have been pushing with legislative champions cover temporary protections for those eligible for the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program under President Obama, as well as prohibiting the creation of immigration registries that could potentially target someone based on their race or religion. Unlike executive actions that could easily be created and repealed by the president, laws passed through Congress could have more lasting impacts. That's why it's important to get in touch with your members of Congress to express support for bills that help immigrants and refugees and oppose efforts to expand detention and deportation. Next, we wanted to have a brief discussion around an analysis of the national political landscape. The 2016 elections has shifted power in Congress to the hands of the Republicans. While Democrats may not hold the power, this represents a unique opportunity to engage with moderate Republicans with diverse constituencies, as they will likely provide the leverage we need to push for policies that will benefit Southeast Asian American communities. Because of this, we need your advocacy and your stories now more than ever. It is becoming especially critical to target these Republican lawmakers who hold much of the decision-making power in Congress, at least for the next few years. SEARAC will be looking to engage more closely with constituents in states such as Texas, Florida, Wisconsin, North Carolina, and other critical swing states. Organizing will be key in pushing for progressive changes that will likely happen on a state and local level. States such as California, New York, and New Mexico have already been doing a lot to put policies in place to protect their immigrant communities. So if you're asking what you can do from your community, there's actually a number of things. You can host safe spaces for healing and strategizing with one another. A lot of our advocacy this year will be rooted in the stories that we would be able to share with lawmakers. So helping us to collect stories from your communities would be very powerful as well. If you have stories that you would like to share, please feel free to reach out to SEARAC or email me at katrina@searac.org. We would definitely love to help you uplift those stories. Next, you can work with state and local leaders to declare your city, school, health center, or even a hospital a sanctuary. You can educate your community about their rights and share available resources to them, and a number of these resources we're going to be sharing at the end of this PowerPoint presentation. And importantly, as I mentioned earlier, it's important to reach out to your local lawmakers to let them know that you stand in solidarity with immigrants and refugees. And lastly, if you can join or even host an action in your local communities, this would be very important in the next few years as well. With that, I'd like to introduce you to our guest speaker, Vichet Chun of the University of Minnesota. Vichet was a former SEARAC board member, and he has been working very actively with a number of Cambodian American community members in Minnesota whose family members are facing imminent deportation. So SEARAC, could you just share with our participants a little bit about your campaign? If you can just kind of give a background on it and share some of the actions and activities you guys have been doing to mobilize support for these community members. And if there's anything that folks on the call could do to support as well, I really welcome you to share that too.
Okay, can you hear me okay? Hi,
yeah.
Katrina.
Awesome.
Okay, hello everybody. Thanks, Katrina, for that introduction. I'm going to talk a little bit about what's now been called the Release Emanate campaign that's been taking place since August here in Minnesota. It wasn't really a campaign. It was just that in last August, 8 Cambodian Americans here in Minnesota were rounded up pretty much around the same time. And so what happened was that people didn't know what to do, right? And so the families began organizing, and a lot of this is kind of like unique to like a Minnesota context, because Minnesota Cambodian American families don't necessarily live in any kind of one or two communities. They're kind of dispersed, but many of the families do know each other or know of each other, and so they began organizing, or at least asking what kind of resources are there for help. And so I was pretty much part of it from almost the very beginning, and I came in to this as a community advocate, and I'm a Cambodian American, so that's important, and I'm also a professor at the University of Minnesota. That last identity is important because in Minnesota, that's what allows, that's probably why people would actually return my call. And so I think that's important to mention in terms of like sort of gathering resources or sort of power mapping in organizing. And so at this very moment, the 8 individuals who were detained in August are still in ICE detention. We've had a number of events, a number of direct actions. We've done signatures, we've done local campaigns, national campaigns, and these individuals are still being detained. And we're just sort of waiting and see and evaluating our very last action, which was last Tuesday, where we really felt like we were putting pressure on ICE. It was a kind of direct action called Not Home for the Holidays, where family members created these giant holiday cards, or Not Home for the Holiday cards, with family photos, but with their loved ones, who are being detained, the detainees scratched out of those photos. And so part of this was a kind of theater, but it was really sending this message that their holidays were not happy, that their holidays were really miserable because of ICE. And so we're just waiting to see what are the effects, if any, of that direct action. At this very moment, early on, in terms of mobilizing support, I think people didn't really know what to do with us. There are a number of nonprofits, a number of organizations, and I think that people didn't really understand what was happening. But as we started to get more traction, and SEARAC has been there from pretty much the beginning, as we started to get more traction, I think then people started realizing, well, hey, there's something going on here. Let me jump on. And I don't mean that in any kind of disparaging way, because I think that people have to make decisions about how they spend their time and what they advocate for. But I think that one of the lessons learned for us and for me and some of the key organizers is that we really have to be mindful of what are the interests, what are the interest convergence here in sort of mobilizing around this issue. I'm gonna stop right there, Katrina, and yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing, Vichat. Vichat, unfortunately, is unable to stay until the end of the call. But if folks have any follow-up questions for him, feel free to write them into the question box on your control panel, or you can shoot me an email at katrina@searac.org. If you're interested in supporting the campaign in any way, we'll make sure to get back to you with answers to any questions you may have. So thanks again, Vichat, for sharing that information. We just wanted to give folks an example of some local campaigns to see some organizing efforts that have been being pushed from a grassroots level. So with that, I wanted to discuss really briefly a number of national campaigns that have been really elevated in the past month. Not even since the inauguration of Trump, but things have been happening and people have been really sort of fired up even ever since the elections. So many of you, for example, I'm sure participated in last Saturday's historic Women's March that mobilized millions of people from around the globe. A number of SEARAC staff participated as well, as you can see in this photo. On January 14th, immigration groups all coordinated a series of protests as well to proclaim that they are here to stay and they're ready to fight back against any attacks that this administration will be taking against immigrant and refugee communities. Additionally, advocates have also launched petitions and campaigns to oppose a number of President Trump's cabinet appointments, including Jeff Sessions, whose history of racism and support for anti-immigrant policies would be extremely detrimental if given the position of Attorney General. Refugee organizations will also be launching a messaging campaign in the next week around how refugee communities love America and help to make it thrive. We'll be sure to forward that information along to folks once it is shared. So to keep sort of up to date on these campaigns and additional ways on how you can continue to engage in the broader immigration fight, please continue to follow updates on our listserv and our Facebook account. We want to ensure that the Southeast Asian American community is represented in this broader immigration movement. SEARAC's long-term strategy will be focusing on a number of key points when we look to immigration policy in the next few years. One of the key things that we will be focusing our attention on is identifying policy champions to oppose any bad legislation presented in Congress. We will support community leaders and key spokespeople such as Wendy Coy and Eddie Zhang uplift their stories to change the hearts and minds of lawmakers when it comes to the issue of criminal deportation. Additionally, SEARAC remains committed to coordinating with and supporting the larger immigrant rights movement We will remain vigilant and ready to show up in solidarity for other communities of color who may be under attack. We will continue to use our annual leadership and advocacy training, and this year we will also be launching our inaugural Equity Summit in the fall, and we will be using these spaces to strategize and coordinate mass mobilization of Southeast Asian American leaders in opposition to bad immigration policies. We will be sure to share information on each of these convenings in the next few months, so definitely please stay tuned. Lastly, SEARAC, through our California office, is currently a part of the Due Process for All coalition that is working to move legislation in California that would guarantee that all immigrants have their fair day in court by guaranteeing access to legal representation. SEARAC brings the unique voices of refugees and those with criminal convictions, and we will continue to fight for their inclusion as this bill moves forward. As we continue to shape and refine our strategy, we invite you all to work with us and share with us the work you do in your own local communities. Before we close, or before we open it up for some Q&A, I wanted to share a few resources that folks might find helpful. So this PowerPoint will be shared later on, as well as the recording, but here are some links to a number of different items. We have a toolkit to defend against ICE raids and arrests. This is a toolkit that was created by the Immigrant Defense Project. We also have our legal resource guide for Southeast Asian Americans facing criminal deportation. This is also available on the SEARAC website. We also have a resource guide from the Department of Education under President Obama for immigrant students and families that share some information on sensitive locations, which is basically a user-friendly explanation of how the Department of Homeland Security defines immigration and enforcement activities. And we've also included some materials from the National Education Association to support safety in schools. The handouts for that is attached, I believe, in the handout section of your control panel. Also included here are Know Your Rights presentations available in a number of languages. Also is a link to the website with the Southern Poverty Law Center to report hate crimes. There's also more information about the Sanctuary Cities movement for those that are interested in providing a safe haven for immigrant communities in your local areas. We will also be sharing additional information as we get access to it that we feel is pertinent and important for our community to have. So with that, we want to open up for some Q&A. So just a few instructions and some ground rules. To begin this portion, we'll take our moderator privilege to just set 3 simple ground rules to create a safe virtual space for us to be in dialogue. First, please respect the points of view that are presented, even if they're different from your own. Second, please share your name when beginning. And finally, please provide your remarks within 3 minutes, which will allow us to get through as many participants as possible. To make a comment or question, please do the following. So in your control panel, look to the far left side of the control panel, and you'll see an orange arrow as the top icon. To let us know that you want to share a comment, please click on the raise hand icon, which you can see as the 4th icon down from the yellow arrow. Once you do this, we will be sure to unmute you and let you know when your line is open to comment. Please also click the raise hand icon to put yourself onto the list of speakers. Lastly, if you feel more comfortable typing in a question, that option is available as well. You'll see in your panel that there is a space under the Questions tab. So you simply have to type your question in there and click the Enter button, and it should be directed straight to the organizers of the webinar. So with that, we would like to open up the line for any questions folks may have for SEARAC, or I'm not sure if chat is still on, but we're open to those questions as well. So we have our first question from Audrey. She asks, are the tools in the criminal deportation guide applicable to other communities besides Southeast Asian Americans? So I'm assuming you're referring to the SEARAC deportation guide with a link that we was shared earlier. The answer to that question is yes. Definitely the tools presented there, the resources shared are open to immigrants in general that are fighting criminal deportation. The guide is very much tailor-fit to take into consideration the unique background and circumstances of Southeast Asian American refugees. But I definitely think that it would be a helpful resource if you know of anybody that's currently fighting a criminal deportation order. So our next question is for Vichet. Vichet, are you still there?
I'm still here.
Awesome. I wanted to catch you before you left. Can you share with folks some things that they could do if they're interested in supporting the Release Minnesota 8 campaign?
Yeah. The first thing you could do is that is like the Release MN8 page on Facebook. And there you'll find more information, links to things that are happening, things that have happened, press, press stories and things like that. We have an email, releasemn8@gmail. If you have just questions about the campaign, things that we'd be more than happy to share things that we've done that have worked out well, and things that maybe hasn't worked out so well. So lessons learned. So those are some of the things immediately. We also have a fundraising campaign through a You Caring page that you can find off of the Facebook, but it's you can find it through our You Caring page through Release the MN8. So yeah. Thank you for the question.
Great, thanks so much, Vichet. Oh, also I think if folks can also like the Release Minnesota 8 page on Facebook, I think that's another way to follow updates, right, Vichet?
Yes. Just go on there and then, so that's a really good way of just keeping up with the campaign.
Great, thank you. So before Vichet leaves, are there any other last minute questions for him before he has to go? Great. So I think we're going to take some questions from folks on the call. We'll start with, I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing your name right, Sitali Figueroa. Are you on the line? Sitali, are you there? I apologize, folks. I think we're having some technical difficulties. I apologize, Sitali. Please feel free to shoot me an email with your question, or you can type it into the question box. We're going to take another question that somebody sent in via the chat box. This person writes, I work with clients who are Hmong. They've been on the deportation list for years, but they have no country to return to, and they are at a standstill. We are having trouble trying to obtain any resources for them, such as SSI, food stamps. Do you have any insight on this? Unfortunately, as far as I know, if you have a deportation order that actually prevents you from accessing resources such as SSI and food stamps, this individual could apply for a work authorization if that's something that they would be interested in. I know that a lot of community members we've worked with before have expressed some frustrations with that process because it does take some time and it also costs a lot of money. So those are the challenges behind that. I would recommend reaching out to local pro bono attorneys around your area that could possibly support you in this process. We also work with other organizations such as the Asian Law Caucus out in California. Our resource guide also lists a number of organizations and lawyers as well that provide that sort of support. So hopefully that answers your question. So for the next question, so this question is from someone from our SEARAC staff, Goia, from our California team. What has been effective ways of holding healing spaces for our Southeast Asian American families fighting for deportation? So thank you for sharing that question, Goia. SEARAC has actually been very fortunate to work with a number of our community partners who have been very supportive around this issue of deportation, specifically around the issue of criminal deportation. In the past year, we've held a number of convenings that have brought us out to California to meet with the formerly and currently incarcerated who are really struggling with deportation orders and trying to figure out basically how to fight this order and basically how to support their families. I think in terms of hosting these safe spaces to support their community members, I think it's important to just always show up, see where you can engage with them and support their campaigns. If they have any actions going on, such as the ones that Vichet was mentioning happening in Minnesota, just kind of showing up there, showing that you are supporting them, usually just means a lot. Sometimes they have actions in terms of social media campaigns or reaching out to lawmakers. So being a voice for them, because sometimes it's difficult for them to be advocates for themselves, I think is very important. And also, as I mentioned earlier, just making sure that their stories are being uplifted to the appropriate people, making sure that organizations such as SEARAC are taking these stories into consideration when we are doing our advocacy and talking with lawmakers. Do folks have anything to add? So for our next question, so another question that we have that usually is brought up a lot is around sanctuary cities. So I know I use the term a lot in this PowerPoint presentation, and it's really going to be one of the key offense strategies that state and local communities can engage with in terms of fighting back against unjust deportations. So one of the questions is, you know, what does it really actually mean to be a sanctuary space or a sanctuary city? So technically, there is no specific legal definition of what a sanctuary city is. But generally speaking, it's basically a city or a space or a community that has policies or laws that limit the extent to which local law enforcement will assist in federal immigration enforcement. So basically, vicinities or localities that refuse to work with immigrations and customs enforcement to detain and deport individuals. So things like this can be enforced through executive orders, through laws, or even through things such as non-binding resolutions. And some things that cities have done to really limit cooperation with immigration enforcement has been, refusing to share information with ICE once somebody is detained in a local prison, for example, or refusing to honor a detainer, which basically means once ICE is notified that an immigrant has been detained, they can issue a detainer with local law enforcement and have them hold this person in that prison until ICE can pick them up within 48 hours. So there have been some localities that have refused to cooperate in that way. And even some states and cities have even gone a step further to push really progressive policies to even support immigrant communities. One example of that is what's happening right now in California. And I just wanted to state the fact too that, we're very used to the term sanctuary city, but in reality, ever since what's been happening since the past election, this definition has really expanded to include spaces such as campuses, health centers and hospitals. And basically anywhere where you have a community, you would have the power to really voice yourself as a sanctuary to really support immigrant and refugees who are facing possible deportation. And actually, in addition to that, we really encourage our advocates and our community members to adopt sanctuary city policies that protect all immigrant communities, including those with criminal convictions. Currently, right now, it's been a struggle to really convince lawmakers that all immigrants are deserving of protection despite their criminal background. So that's definitely a very unique space that SEARAC has tried to really push our lawmakers on. So if folks have any questions, please don't be shy. Again, feel free to raise your hand if you'd like to speak, or if you'd like to type in a question as well, we welcome that. Again, folks, please don't be shy. Even if you don't want to ask a question, if you want to share around maybe some community organizing you're doing in your state or local, we'd love to hear from you as well. Or any recommendations in terms of strategies that you think that SEARAC should be looking into, we definitely love to hear from you. Okay, so as we wait, here's another question that folks usually like to know, or it's kind of important information. So in the past, we've been asked, how can individuals best support community members facing detention and deportation? So I know that when you know of community members or family members that are facing deportation, it's a very sort of overwhelming and a very scary thing. But I just want you guys to know that there is a lot that individuals can do to support these community members. So things as simple as, sharing resources with them. So a number of the resources that were shared on this call around, knowing your rights, our criminal deportation guide, which contains resources on pro bono attorneys that they can work with to help them with their case, would be very helpful. You could also help to organize your community to support them. So looking at the model that the Minnesota 8 was really good in pursuing, they just kind of came together very organically. They planned a series of actions to really target their local ICE office. They held multiple rallies to demand support from their local lawmakers. And they even reached out to local media to ensure that their story was being uplifted, not only in the local news, but in the national news as well. Another thing you could do is to help put these community members in touch with their members of Congress, especially if you are located here in Washington, D.C., making sure to, and if these individuals are, say, detained or unable to share, maybe being that conduit or being that advocate to help share that story on their behalf. And also, as I mentioned earlier, being a source of emotional support for these individuals. And also, as I mentioned earlier, reaching out to SEARAC as well, even if it's for some support and guidance or advice on how best to proceed. And if you're interested in possibly uplifting your advocacy efforts on a more national stage, maybe exploring ways with us on how we can help support those efforts. Overall, there's really a lot that individuals can do. And I really, again, want to point to a lot of the organizations we work with, such as Fight out in Seattle, the Asian Prisoner Support Committee out of Oakland, California, Khmer Girls in Action out in California as well, that have been really doing a lot to support these community members that are awaiting deportation. So we received a type-in question from Jennifer Castro. Her question is, I want to know what exactly is the Stop Sessions campaign mentioned earlier. So Jeff Sessions is, he is President Trump's nominee to be the country's next Attorney General. And he currently in the second week of January, he underwent a confirmation hearing. And a number of immigration advocates, including SEARAC and a number of our partners, have come out in vocal opposition to his appointment to this very important post due to his very racist and anti-immigrant policies and sort of his history opposing legislation that would be beneficial for immigrant communities. So a number of our partners, I think among them are Advancing Justice AAJC, launched a petition entitled Stop Sessions, and basically they circulated a sign-on letter for community groups to basically sign on in support to stopping his confirmation as our next Attorney General. If you're interested in learning more about this campaign and trying to get more information on next steps, please feel free to email me at katrina@searac.org, and I can be sure to loop you in into next steps for that specific campaign. So I think we have someone who raised their hand that wants to ask a question. Who's Tang? I hope I pronounced your name right. Are you on the line? Did you want to ask a question? I think we just unmuted you. Unfortunately, we can't hear you. If you did mean to ask us a question, please feel free to type it in. If you're having technical difficulties, we'd love to hear from you. Okay, folks, so we have about 15 minutes left. Are there any last-minute questions that folks would like to ask? Please don't be shy. Please feel free to type it in if you don't feel comfortable asking on the phone. Okay, folks. So for our last question, folks would like to know how can community members support the work that SEARAC is doing around deportation? So, there are a number of things. Number one, just continuing to be engaged. For folks that participated on this call, thank you for taking the time today to join us. We really appreciated hearing from you. If you haven't done so yet, joining our listserv and following us on social media to basically keep up to date on our advocacy efforts. And again, if we have any action items or action alerts that we feel like would be helpful for the community to be engaged with, we'll be sharing those things through these mediums as well. We also recommend participation in our numerous leadership trainings through our leadership advocacy training that's going to be happening this summer, and also participation in our inaugural equity summit that will be happening in October. If you're signed into our listserv, we'll be sharing additional information, including the dates of these events. We would love to really strategize and sit down with Southeast Asian American community leaders around the issue of detention and deportation. And it will really provide a space for us to continue building our networks so that we can continue leveraging our collective power. So thank you again, everyone, for your very thoughtful questions. If you have questions that were not covered, please feel free to shoot me an email, and we will definitely do our best to get back to you with some answers. So to end today's call, we just wanted to do a quick poll with folks. So the first question is just to get an idea, if folks can share what part of the country are folks located, or what part of the country are you guys calling from? Great, thanks, folks. Give it another 20 seconds if you can type in your answer. I'm sorry, folks can select your answer through the poll that you can see on your screen. So we have Northwest, Midwest, South, and the West. Okay, so it looks like a great majority of folks are calling in from the West. And it looks like roughly the other half dialing in from the Northeast. And about 6% dialing in from the Midwest and the South. So really thankful for those folks for joining us today. And then the second question we wanted to pose with folks, which of the following immigration topics would you like to receive additional information on? So this will really help SEARAC with its strategy in terms of creating any sort of resource guides or fact sheets. So would you like more information on deferred action for childhood arrivals or undocumented issues, refugee resettlement, deportation and enforcement expansion, naturalization, or family reunification? There might be other answers as well, but these are the top that we usually get. Okay, we're going to give it about 10 more seconds if folks can just put their answer in. Okay, great. So it looks like, deportation, enforcement, and expansion is definitely number one on the priorities, followed by undocumented issues and family reunification. And a number of folks also want to hear about refugee resettlement. So definitely thank you for your input, and we'll take that into consideration as we create materials for the community. So thank you everyone for your active engagement and participation on this call. We will continue to update you as we monitor the policies that come out from this administration with regards to immigration and deportation. Our next community call will be held on March 21, and it will focus on protecting the Affordable Care Act and Medicare. We'll be sending out details on how you can register in the coming weeks, so please stay tuned. In the meantime, if you have any follow-up questions and comments, please don't hesitate to email me at katrina@searac.org. Thanks again, everyone. We hope you found this call helpful. Please take the time to answer a quick survey that you will be receiving at the close of this webinar. Have a nice day.